It's Victoria from Madison Strawberries. I'm going to start out reading a portion of Civil Disobedience, an essay written by Henry David Thoreau on Walden Pond. It is not a man's duty, as a matter of course, to devote himself to the eradication of any, even the most enormous wrong. He may still properly have other concerns to engage him, but it is his duty, at least, to wash his hands of it, and, if he gives it no thought longer, not to give it practically his support. If I devote myself to other pursuits and contemplations, I must first see, at least, that I do not pursue them sitting upon another man's shoulders. I must get off him first, that he may pursue his contemplations too. See what gross inconsistency is tolerated. I have heard some of my townsmen say I should like to have them order me out to help put down an insurrection of the slaves, or to march to Mexico. See if I would go. And yet these very men have each, directly, by their allegiance, and so indirectly, at least, by their money, furnished a substitute. The soldier is applauded who refuses to serve in an unjust war by those who do not refuse to sustain the unjust government which makes the war. Is applauded by those whose own act and authority he disregards and sets at naught, as if the state were penitent to that degree that it hired one to scourge it while it sinned, but not to that degree that it left off sinning for a moment. Thus, under the name of order and civil government, we are all made at least to pay homage to and support our own meanness. After the first blush of sin comes its indifference, and from immoral it becomes, as it were, unmoral, and not quite unnecessary to that life which we have made. I'm reading this because the one line in here about walking away from it all, basically, has to do with news that's trending right now about the transgender athlete competing out in California. So we're still in this war again, this culture war. And if there's laws put in that that is illegal, then Trump should definitely rescind all funding to Commie California. And make no mistake, California is the test bed for the new world order, the global communist state that they want throughout our whole country. So I'm going to read a little bit of that article from ESPN, and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. But it's a news article trending, and I thought Walden summed it up pretty good. You can learn a lot if you just sit in the woods or at the pond, right? So this article was posted yesterday off of CNN, or ESPN, sorry. So this is out of Clovis, California. A transgender athlete bested the competition Saturday at the California High School Track and Field Championships to take home gold in the girls' high jump and the triple jump at a meet that has stirred controversy and drawn national attention. And I might add, there's more poster board signs. Should have got that stock. A.B. Hernandez competed under a new rule change that might be the first of its kind nationally by a high school sports governing body. Hernandez finished the high jump with a mark of 5 feet 7 inches with no failed attempts. Co-winners Jolene Wetland and Lalani Lauralee also cleared that height after each logged a failed attempt. The three shared the first place win, smiling as they stepped together onto the podium. Hernandez, a junior at Jurupa Valley High School, wrapped up the night with a first-place finish in the triple jump, sharing the top spot with Kira Gant Hatcher, who trailed by just over a half a meter. Earlier in the afternoon, Hernandez placed second in the long jump. Olympians Marion Jones and Tara, what is that name? Tara Davis previously set championship records in the long jump in 1993 and 2017, respectively, both surpassing 22 feet. This year's winner, Lauren Webster, topped 21 feet, with Hernandez trailing by a few inches. Webster, a senior from Wilson High School, told the Los Angeles Times that she focused only on her performance and didn't give Hernandez much thought. It wasn't any other person I was worried about. I knew what I was capable of. I can't control the uncontrollable. I don't think it's uncontrollable, a man dressed as a woman. I think that's very controllable. Anyway, the California Interscholastic Federation announced the new policy earlier this week in response to Hernandez's success heading into the championships. Under the policy, the Federation allowed an additional student to compete and medal in the events where Hernandez qualified. The two-day championship kicked off Friday in sweltering heat. I'm sure it was hot there. At a high school near Fresno. Temperatures reached the triple digits during Saturday's finals. I'm sure they did. The atmosphere was relatively quiet despite critics, including parents, conservative activists, and President Donald Trump, calling for Hernandez to be barred from competing. Some critics wore pink bracelets and t-shirts that read "Save Girls Sports." During Friday's qualifying events, an aircraft circled above the stadium for more than an hour with the banner "No Boys and Girls Sports." Two groups that opposed transgender athletes participating in women's sports, the Independent Council on Women's Sports and Women Are Real, took credit for flying the banner. The Federation's rule change reflected efforts to find a middle ground in the debate over trans girls' participation in youth sports. The CIF values all of our student athletes, and we will continue to uphold our mission of providing students with the opportunity to belong, connect, and compete while complying with California law, the group said in a statement after announcing its rule change. The Federation announced the change after Trump threatened to pull federal funding from California unless it bars trans girls from competing on girls' teams. The Federation said it decided on the change before them. Well, you know what? If I was Trump, the money would be pulled immediately. Sorry, you were given a warning. The U.S. Department of Justice also said it would investigate the Federation and the district that includes Hernandez's high school to determine whether they violated federal sex discrimination law. California law allows trans students to compete on sex-segregated sports teams consistent with their gender identity. Well, you know what? Maybe California needs to just go be their own little state over there, their own little country. And if I was Trump, they were warned they wouldn't get federal funding anymore. And, you know, the saddest part of this all is the girls there that just comply. That oh, I'm just competing against me. That's BS. That's total BS. If you're just competing against you, you'd be out on a track all alone. You wouldn't care about a medal. This is nonsense. Everyone should walk off. And just like I read this essay in the beginning, you don't comply. You don't give them your money. You don't participate in this. And instead, you know, the lemmings clap. If I was Trump, the money'd be pulled. They were warned. So, news from the world today, with some thoughts from a man that just sat alone in the woods for a while at a pond. I got a pond down the road. So while reading through this story about the trans athlete showing up in California, the one girl that was on the track team commented that she didn't care. She was just there trying to be the better than she could be. Well, then why are you competing? That's why it's called a competition. If you could sit at home and run track all on your own, you wouldn't have to be part of a team or a high school. If this was just about, I'm competing against myself to be the better than I could be. And they've warped the thought processes of our children very easily, and that's been being done for at least a decade. And so I was thinking about that because I remember, how many years ago was that? Probably at least 7 or more. I was at a pizza place, and with my husband at the time, and they were giving out trophies. I don't know if it was like a bowling league or baseball for kids or whatever. Anyway, every member got a trophy. Every member of the team, even a trophy for making everybody laugh. And although everyone thinks that's fair, it's the socialist agenda to make everything the same, that there's no first, second, third. And it's the destruction of everything that was. And then you put those seeds into the children where they think there's nothing wrong with a trans athlete competing against them in a girls' track meet. A mentally ill man, young man, competing against girls. And I have to say, I watched video clips yesterday, and make no mistake, the body language, the way that, just the body language of that young male is indicative of, mental condition. I don't care what anybody says. If you're confused at a basic level of whether you're a male or a female and you weren't born a hermaphrodite, then you've got a mental condition. And, it's easily done. It could be easily done through our programming nowadays, creating confusion about your sexuality, just because there's so much graphic, nasty stuff on our television that children can get to at a very early age. Plus now our children are seeing all of this at a very early age. Men and men kissing on TV, and women for these just even medication ads. So anything of this world, you're going to have that run that risk that your children, if you don't have serious conversations about all of this, are going to end up confused. Besides the fact that you've got, just in the hand sanitizer alone that was, pimped out with COVID in 2020, there's chemicals in there that turned frogs non-gender. So there's chemicals in our food that are doing it. We don't know what's in inoculations for the children. And the infant formula, the baby food, and ladies, when you wear makeup, the chemicals in makeup, actually, if you ever are to have a male baby, the chemicals in your makeup can actually damage the testosterone in your male children. So, it's a full frontal attack on male and females because they want an androgynous drone working class over the whole world in the future. And us that like our genitals and identify as male or female and enjoy living a natural life the way God intended will be considered strange to the people that reside in the beehive cities. And that's not to mention even like spiritual implications of watching this A.B. Hernandez. There's definitely something spiritual dark spiritual entity. People don't want to talk about that part. And then they'll say, well, there was people like that back in the tribal days. No, they were twin souls. They were few and far between. They weren't, every street down the road, someone gender confused. It was a very sacred thing among Aboriginal people when a male and a female kind of spirit resided in the same body. And it was not exactly running rampant. But nobody wants to talk about like the actual fact that something could walk in to a body, take it over with strange behavior, body language, strange body language. Could pick up on sometimes strange body language. And, psychiatrists would say that that's a mental disorder, but shamans and people that have been trained, perhaps exorcisms, exorcist rites, would say that maybe there's an entity that is animating said body. And we'll end this with this final excerpt from Civil Disobedience by Walden, as we talk about news of the world. Unjust laws exist. Shall we be content to obey them, or shall we endeavor to amend them and obey them until we have succeeded, or shall we transgress them at once? Men generally, under such a government as this, think that they ought to wait until they have persuaded the majority to alter them. They think that if they should resist, the remedy would be worse than the evil. But it is the fault of the government itself that the remedy is worse than the evil. It makes it worse. Why is it not more apt to anticipate and provide for reform? Why does it not cherish its wise minority? Why does it cry and resist before it is hurt? Why does it not encourage its citizens to be on the alert to point out its faults and do better than it would have them? Why does it always crucify Christ and excommunicate Copernicus and Luther and pronounce Washington and Franklin rebels? And that's what our modern day government would be. If you have any of the notion of our founding fathers, George Washington or Franklin, you're a rebel now. If you say you don't want males participating in female sports. Yep. So that's the latest across the country. And I have darker thoughts about California, but I'll keep them to myself. I don't need to go to confession. Have a great day. Peace be with y'all.